December 20th, 1943, the skies over Bremen, Germany. Second Lieutenant Charles Yeager banks his T-51 Mustang hard left as tracer rounds slice through the air where his cockpit was a fraction of a second earlier. He is 19 years old. This is his 8th combat mission. His hands are shaking so badly he can barely grip the stick. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 on his tail is flown by Unteroffizier Ludwig Frankiset, a veteran with 11 confirmed kills. Frankiset has been hunting Allied pilots for 2 years. He knows every maneuver in the book and is already positioning for the killing shot. Standard doctrine is clear. Maintain formation, execute coordinated attacks, never break away from your wingman. The Army Air Forces have spent millions developing these tactics. Fighter groups practice them relentlessly. Survival depends on discipline and following the manual. Yeager's fuel gauge is dropping. His ammunition counter shows 60 rounds remaining. The nearest friendly aircraft is 3 miles away. By every calculation, he should be dead in the next 30 seconds. What Frankiset doesn't know is that Yeager is about to do something that violates every rule in the fighter pilot's handbook, something so reckless, so counterintuitive that senior officers will dismiss it as impossible when he reports it, something that will accidentally revolutionize air combat for the next 80 years. But first, we need to understand why American fighter pilots were dying at catastrophic rates in the winter of 1943. By December 1943, the United States Army Air Forces face a crisis that threatens the entire strategic bombing campaign over Europe. The numbers are devastating. During the Schweinfurt-Regensburg raids in August 1943, the 8th Air Force loses 60 bombers in a single day, 600 men killed or captured. In October, another raid on Schweinfurt cost 62 more bombers. The loss rate exceeds 20% on deep penetration missions. At this rate, bomber crews have virtually no chance of surviving their required 25-mission tour. The problem is range. P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings can escort bombers to the German border, but they lack the fuel capacity to penetrate deep into the Reich. Once the escorts turn back, Luftwaffe fighters swarm the bomber formations like wolves on wounded prey. The obvious solution is long-range escort fighters. North American Aviation has delivered the P-51 Mustang, capable of reaching Berlin and returning. But a second, more insidious problem remains. American fighter doctrine is fundamentally flawed. The tactics manual, written by senior officers who learned to fly in the 1920s, emphasizes formation flying and coordinated textbook maneuvers. Pilots are taught to maintain strict positioning and never break discipline. Individual initiative is discouraged. The manual is gospel. German pilots, however, fight with an entirely different philosophy. Luftwaffe doctrine, refined through years of combat over Spain, Poland, France, and Russia, emphasizes aggressive individual action. Aces like Adolf Galland and Günter Rahl perfect the finger four formation and energy fighting tactics that give them enormous advantages. The kill ratio tells the story. In late 1943, experienced Luftwaffe pilots averaged 3 to 4 kills for every aircraft they lose. Some aces, like Egon Meyer and Walter Nowotny, have ratios exceeding 10 to 1. American commanders know something is wrong. After-action reports show U.S. pilots being outmaneuvered despite flying aircraft of equal or superior performance. More formation training doesn't help. Neither does stricter adherence to doctrine. Senior officers conclude the pilots need better aircraft, more flight hours, and stricter discipline. The tactics must be sound, the problem must be execution. This assumption is about to be shattered by a teenager from Hamlin, West Virginia, who barely graduated high school. Charles Woodrow Yeager is not supposed to be here. He grows up in the Appalachian foothills during the Great Depression. His family is poor. His father works in coal mines and natural gas fields. Chuck hunts squirrels and rabbits to put food on the table, developing exceptional eyesight and hand-eye coordination. He can spot a squirrel in a tree at 300 yards. He enlists in the Army Air Forces in September 1941 as an aircraft mechanic. He has no college education, no wealthy connections, no flying experience. He maintains P-39 Airacobras at Tonopah, Nevada. In July 1942, facing a severe pilot shortage, the Air Forces launched the Flying Sergeant program, allowing enlisted men to train as pilots without officer commissions. Yeager volunteers immediately. His superiors are skeptical, his schooling is marginal, and flight training requires split-second judgment and spatial awareness many washouts never master. But he proves them wrong. At flight school in California and Arizona, he demonstrates natural flying ability. His vision tests at 2010, twice as sharp as normal. He can spot enemy aircraft before anyone else in formation. He graduates in March 1943 and receives his commission. By November 1943, Yeager arrives in England with the 363rd Fighter Squadron, 357th Fighter Group. He has roughly 270 flight hours. Many squadron mates have college degrees, wealthy backgrounds, or pre-war pilot licenses. Yeager is the poor kid from West Virginia with an Appalachian drawl and little social polish. His aircraft is P-51B Mustang serial number 436763, which he names Glamorous Glenn after his girlfriend, Glennis Dickhouse. On December 20, 1943, during a bomber escort mission to Bremen, everything changes. The moment of insight comes not from study or doctrine, it comes from raw survival instinct. When Ludwig Frankeset's Bf-109 latches onto his tail, Yeager realizes he is about to die. Frankeset fires a burst. Cannon shells rip past the canopy. He closes for a deflection shot that will shred the Mustang's engine. Training tells Yeager to maintain altitude, execute a standard evasive turn, and try to reach friendly aircraft. Every instinct says stay high where the Mustang excels. Instead, he does something insane. He rolls inverted, pulls the stick back, and dives nearly straight down towards the German countryside, 7,000 feet below. The airspeed needle blows past 400 miles an hour, then 450. The wings begin to buffet at structural limits. His vision grays from negative G-forces. This is suicide. Everyone knows a Bf-109 with its fuel-injected engine outdives American fighters in negative G maneuvers. Diving away is exactly what you don't do. But Yeager isn't thinking about doctrine. He's thinking like the boy who grew up hunting. Use terrain, use speed, use whatever advantage you can. The Mustang's Packard-built Merlin engine, with its two-stage supercharger, behaves differently at high speed than anyone expected. As Yeager plummets towards the deck, the Mustang accelerates faster than the pursuing Bf-109. At 500 miles an hour, the controls nearly lock from aerodynamic pressure. Frankeset follows, firing repeatedly, but his rounds fall farther behind. The Mustang is pulling away. At 1,500 feet, Yeager hauls back on the stick with both hands. The G-forces slam him into his seat. His vision tunnels. The Mustang's wings flex upward, stressed nearly to failure. The aircraft bottoms out at 800 feet, traveling at 480 miles an hour. Frankeset tries to follow. The Bf-109 pulls out at 600 feet, but the maneuver has drained his energy. His airspeed has dropped to 320 miles per hour. Yeager levels out, looks back and sees something that shouldn't be possible. The German fighter that was killing him 30 seconds ago is now behind him, slow and vulnerable. Frankeset is desperately trying to regain speed and altitude. Yeager reverses, climbs slightly, and positions himself behind the Bf-109. At 400 yards, he fires a 3-second burst.
50 caliber rounds tear into the German fighter's wing root and fuselage. The Bf-109 rolls left, trailing smoke, and spirals toward the ground. Yeager has just executed the first recorded high-speed yo-yo maneuver in combat aviation history. He doesn't know that's what it's called. He doesn't even fully understand what he's done. He just knows he survived when he shouldn't have. When he lands at RAF Leiston and reports the engagement, his squadron commander's reaction is immediate. That is absolutely impossible. The 109 outperforms us in every dive scenario. You must have misidentified the aircraft. The intelligence officer is skeptical. The gun camera footage is inconclusive. The dive was too violent and the camera couldn't track properly. Several senior pilots review Yeager's account and dismiss it as confused memory from combat stress. You cannot outdive a Messerschmitt, says Major Thomas Hayes, the group operations officer. Their fuel injection system gives them decisive advantages in negative G maneuvers. This is established fact. Doctrine is clear. American fighters should maintain altitude advantage and use coordinated attacks. Diving away from enemy fighters is explicitly discouraged in the tactics manual. What Yeager describes violates principles senior officers learned at the Air Corps Tactical School. But Yeager isn't alone. Over the next 3 weeks, other pilots begin reporting similar experiences. Lieutenant William Wisner performs a near-vertical dive to escape two FW-190s and discovers the same phenomenon. At extreme speeds, the Mustang's performance characteristics change dramatically. Captain Don Blakesley, commander of the 4th Fighter Group and one of the most experienced American pilots in Europe, decides to investigate. On January 11, 1944, he takes a P-51B to 25,000 feet over the English Channel and performs a series of high-speed dive tests. The results are startling. Below 20,000 feet, in dives exceeding 450 miles per hour, the Mustang accelerates in a dive faster than any German fighter. The two-stage supercharger, designed for high-altitude performance, creates unexpected advantages at high speed and low altitude. Blakesley writes a detailed report and submits it to 8th Fighter Command Headquarters. The response is immediate and hostile. At a commander's meeting on January 18, 1944, Blakesley presents his findings. The room erupts. Senior officers who have been flying since the 1920s are being told that fundamental assumptions about fighter combat are wrong. That a barely educated teenager from West Virginia discovered something they missed. "This is reckless cowboy flying," says Colonel Hubert Zemke, commander of the 56th Fighter Group. "We cannot abandon coordinated tactics for individual heroics. That's what gets pilots killed." "Your data is flawed," argues another colonel. "German fighters have fuel injection. We have carburetors. Physics doesn't lie." The meeting threatens to end with Blakesley's report being buried. Bureaucratic inertia is enormous. Changing doctrine requires admitting previous doctrine was wrong. Careers have been built on the existing system. Then Major General William Kepner, commander of 8th Fighter Command, intervenes. Kepner is a maverick. He learned to fly in 1916. He survived combat in World War I. He has watched too many young pilots die following tactics that no longer work. He is willing to challenge conventional wisdom if evidence supports it. "Gentlemen," Kepner says, "I don't care if this contradicts everything we learned at tactical school. I care about kill ratios. Blakesley's group has the highest success rate in the theater. If his pilots are surviving by breaking the rules, then maybe our rules are wrong." Kepner orders immediate testing. Over the next 2 weeks, test pilots put P-51Bs through extreme dive profiles. The data confirms Blakesley's findings. At speeds above 450 miles per hour, the Mustang accelerates in a dive faster than the Bf-109 and FW-190. On February 3, 1944, Kepner issues a revolutionary directive. Fighter pilots are authorized to use individual initiative and aggressive tactics, including high-speed diving attacks. Formation discipline is de-emphasized. Pilots are encouraged to exploit the Mustang's high-speed performance. The old guard is appalled, but Kepner has the authority and uses it. Before we see how this changes the air war, I need to tell you about this channel's mission. We bring you stories of innovation and courage that changed history, stories textbooks often overlook. If you value deep research and documentary quality content, please subscribe. 92% of viewers watch without subscribing, but your support helps justify the research hours these episodes require. Thank you. The new tactics are tested immediately. On February 20, 1944, the 8th Air Force launches Big Week, a massive campaign to destroy German aircraft production. More than 1,000 bombers strike targets deep in Germany, escorted by P-51 Mustangs flying with Kepner's new doctrine. March 3, 1944. The sky over Berlin. Yeager, now with 12 kills, leads a flight of 4 Mustangs at 28,000 feet. Below them, 300 B-17 bombers approach the capital city. Luftwaffe fighters rise to intercept Bf-109s and FW-190s from JG-3 and JG-11, some of Germany's most elite units. Oberlieutenant Heinz Bahr, an ace with 170 kills, leads a swarm of Bf-109 G6s. He spots Yeager's flight and begins a climbing attack, planning a diving pass on the bombers. Yeager sees them first. His exceptional vision gives him 30 seconds of warning. Instead of maintaining formation and executing a coordinated defense, he does something that would have been forbidden 3 months earlier. He rolls inverted and dives, not away from the German fighters, but toward them, building enormous speed. His wingman, Lieutenant Clarence Bud Anderson, follows immediately. The other 2 Mustangs maintain high cover. Bahr sees the Americans diving and assumes they're fleeing. He adjusts his approach toward the bombers. That is exactly what Yeager wants. At 600 miles per hour, a speed that makes the controls feel welded solid, Yeager pulls up underneath Barr's formation. The Bf-109s are traveling at 380 miles per hour, focused on the bombers ahead. They never see the Mustangs coming from below. Yeager fires a 2-second burst at the trailing 109. The German fighter explodes. Barr brakes hard left, but Anderson is already there, firing. Barr's wingman goes down, trailing fire. The remaining two 109s dive away. Yeager and Anderson don't pursue. They climb back to altitude, using their massive speed advantage to regain position above the bombers. The entire engagement lasts 45 seconds. 2 German fighters destroyed. 0 American losses. The bombers continue unmolested. This pattern repeats across the sky. American pilots using the new tactics achieve kill ratios that were impossible under the old doctrine.
The Luftwaffe, accustomed to predictable American formations, suddenly faces aggressive individual attacks from unexpected angles. The numbers tell the story. In January 1944, before the new tactics, 8th Fighter Command's kill ratio averages 2.1 to 1. By April 1944, after the adoption of energy fighting tactics, it rises to 4.3 to 1. By June, it reaches 6.1 to 1. German pilots notice immediately. Oberleutnant Johannes Steinhoff, a veteran ace, writes in his diary, "The American fighters have changed. They no longer fly in rigid formations. They dive from impossible altitudes at terrifying speeds. Our fuel-injected engines, which once gave us advantages, no longer matter. They are faster than us now." General Major Adolf Galland, commander of Germany's fighter forces, reports to Hermann Göring in April 1944, "The American Mustang pilots have adopted our own energy fighting tactics and improved on them. Their aircraft's high-speed performance exceeds our capabilities. We are losing experienced pilots at an unsustainable rate." The bomber crews noticed the change as well. Their survival rates improved dramatically. Lieutenant James Howard, a P-51 pilot, writes home, "The fighter boys are different now. They don't just escort us, they hunt. The Germans are scared of them." May 8, 1944. On that same day, Chuck Yeager encounters one of his most challenging opponents, Hauptmann Georg Peter Ader, an ace with 36 kills, flying a Bf-109 G-10, the latest variant with improved performance. The engagement occurs at 24,000 feet over Brunswick. Ader holds the altitude advantage and initiates a diving attack. Yeager reverses into him, forcing a head-on pass. Both pilots fire. Both miss. Ader expects Yeager to climb away to regain altitude. Instead, Yeager rolls and dives nearly vertically, building speed. Ader follows, confident in his aircraft's diving ability. At 550 miles per hour, Yeager pulls out and reverses sharply. Ader tries to follow, but the G-forces are too severe. His vision grays. His pullout is shallow. When he recovers, Yeager is behind him at 400 yards. Yeager fires. Ader's 109 takes hits in the engine and wing. Smoke pours from the cowling. Ader manages to nurse his damaged fighter back to base, but the aircraft is written off. After the war, Ader writes, "The American pilot who damaged my aircraft on May 8, 1944, executed maneuvers I thought impossible. He dove away from me and somehow ended up behind me. Our intelligence briefing said this could not happen. We were wrong." By June 1944, the Luftwaffe is in crisis. Experienced pilots are being killed faster than they can be replaced. Training programs are shortened, producing poorly prepared pilots who often die on their first missions. The 8th Air Force gains air superiority over Germany. The human cost is measurable. Bomber loss rates dropped from 20% in October 1943 to less than 4% by June 1944. Thousands of aircrews survived missions that would have been fatal under earlier tactics. After the war, a P-51 pilot named Robert Morgan finds Yeager at an air show. Morgan flew 30 missions over Germany in 1944. He tells Yeager, "My crew calculated that we should have been shot down on our 8th mission based on 1943 loss rates. We flew 22 more after that. Because of you, and pilots like you, we came home. My children exist because you figured out how to keep us alive." The impact extends beyond World War II. The energy fighting tactics that Yeager discovered unintentionally and that Don Blakesley systematized became the foundation of modern fighter doctrine. Concepts like trading altitude for speed,
Using high-velocity maneuvers and exploiting aircraft performance envelopes are still fundamental to air combat. The P-51 Mustang, optimized for these tactics, becomes the most successful American fighter of the war. North American Aviation produces 15,586 Mustangs. They destroy 4,950 enemy aircraft in air combat, more than any other Allied fighter. Yeager's unit, the 357th Fighter Group, achieves the highest kill ratio in Europe, 5.7 to 1, with 609 enemy aircraft destroyed at the cost of 106 Mustangs. Colonel Don Blakesley, who fought to validate Yeager's accidental discovery, ends the war with 15.5 kills. He never receives the Medal of Honor, despite being recommended 3 times. In a 1989 interview, he says, "The real heroes were kids like Yeager, who figured things out when everyone told them they were wrong. I just had enough rank to make sure people listened." Lieutenant General William Kepner, who overruled his staff to authorize the new tactics, sees his February 1944 directive, studied for decades, as an example of leadership, the willingness to challenge doctrine when evidence demands it. German pilots who survived the war speak respectfully of their American opponents. Johannes Steinhoff writes in 1977, "By mid-1944, American fighter pilots had surpassed us in tactics and aggressiveness. They learned faster than we could adapt. The Mustang pilots especially, they were exceptional." The lesson extends beyond aviation. Innovation often comes from unexpected sources. A young pilot from West Virginia with minimal education saw what experienced officers missed. The system nearly rejected his discovery because it contradicted established doctrine. How many innovations have been lost because they came from the wrong person or challenged the wrong assumptions? Yeager dies on December 7, 2020, at age 97. His obituary calls him the most famous test pilot of his generation. It mentions breaking the sound barrier and his combat record. It does not mention that he helped revolutionize air combat by doing something everyone said was impossible. Sometimes the greatest innovations come from desperate improvisation, not from experts following procedure, but from outsiders who don't know what's impossible. Chuck Yeager didn't set out to change military doctrine, he just wanted to survive his 8th mission. That he did so by breaking every rule in the book and saved thousands of lives in the process is what makes his story remarkable. The next time someone insists something is impossible because it contradicts established wisdom, remember the 19-year-old from West Virginia who didn't know he could outdive a German ace and did it anyway.